Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining our latest Sedaru Live. Give everybody a few moments to get situated today. I hope your Tuesday is going well. Today we're going to be talking about optimizing pump and lift station maintenance rounds, and I say rounds because most utilities typically have a repetitive schedule around how they are routinely checking on their pump stations and lift stations. And I think you'll see as we go through some things and talk about stuff today that you'll see some interesting ways or opportunities. The light bulbs might be going off in your head on some different approaches to how you look at and treat some of that maintenance that you're doing today. I'm sure everybody's a Zoom expert now. If you joined one of these webinars before, everything, the controls and all of that are exactly the same. But for those of you that are new to the Zoom interface or new to these webinars, I'll run you through a couple things. So you'll notice on your controls for the webinar that there's a button called Q&A. That's going to be your spot to ask questions. So that Q&A is monitored. As we go through the webinar, we'll answer questions. So feel free to kind of fire those questions away whenever you like, whenever something comes to your mind. The more questions you ask, that tends to strengthen and improve the webinar. We want to pass out as much information as possible in as short amount of time as possible to you. So if you ask questions, it becomes a little more interactive, becomes a little more fun for everybody. So I would certainly encourage you to do that. From a time perspective, we aim to keep these at about 30 minutes. So we've got about probably 20-25 minutes worth of content to talk about. And then, like I said, some time in there for questions on things. So we can keep it short, keep it brief, but give you as much information as possible. A couple other things to mention to you. If you don't follow us on social media, go out on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, pull your phone out in the middle of this webinar and go ahead and look for Sedaru on that social media platform of choice and follow us there. We pass out a lot of good information on there, and really is a great way to kind of stay in touch with us. So take a few moments and do that. I'll also mention we're in a spot where we're doing these webinars 2 a week. We're going to keep doing that for a little bit. It seems like people really enjoy them as we're still not doing any real face-to-face meetings and interactions with folks. It's become a really effective way to talk about Sedaru and to help really get to the bottom of a lot of the problems that utilities have. So we're going to keep doing these twice a week for a little bit here. So coming up on Thursday, we're going to be talking about meter management and how you can use Sedaru to really digitally kind of manage everything you're doing with meters. Following Tuesday, we're actually going to talk about how you can use Sedaru Field Force tied into other work management systems, right? So Sedaru is its own work management system, but we have folks out there that are using like a Maximo or a CityWorks or an Infor product, right? And some of those older legacy kind of work management systems, Sedaru can be tied right into them as well too. So it's an interesting angle. So for those of you that have those kind of systems, you certainly don't want to miss that on Tuesday. And then next Thursday, we're actually going to talk all about hydrant maintenance and everything around managing hydrants and using Sedaru for that. So whether you're talking about flushing activities and accounting for lost water or just sort of routine maintenance, all those pieces. So should be pretty, they'll be pretty good topics. Same kind of format, 30 minutes, and we'll get you through them. And then I'll mention here our Sedaru drops, right? And Sedaru drops is our approach, our way that we are able to deploy advanced technology to utilities, right? And when we think about your water utility and how you operate, you tend to want to deploy things in a stepwise fashion, right? And to do one piece and then the next piece, right? And Sedaru is really built and designed to allow you to do that. And so it starts by thinking about how do you do things more digitally, how do you use that data in real time, and then once you're doing that, being able to optimize and then moving towards these kind of predictive, preemptive, self-driving strategies. We're going to talk today, again, kind of mostly on the left over here, the DRO kind of piece, which is where we've been for these webinars for the last couple of weeks. We're putting together the schedule for kind of the next few weeks as well too. So we're going to sprinkle in some more of these kind of advanced analytics pieces as well too in the coming weeks. So be pretty excited to share more of those kind of pieces with you there. So we're going to jump right into things and talk about optimizing pump station, lift station maintenance. I'm going to actually start the demo from our field force application. So let me, I'm going to switch over to my phone. So give me 1 second here. And because I'd like to, we think about optimizing pump station maintenance, what we're really having to think about is what does that look like in the field for folks, right? So, and so I'd like to kind of start and let's talk about it from a field interface. So let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Sedaru Field Force application, which is running on my, I'm running it on my phone here. I really like the phone interface for a lot of things, and I think you'll see as we go into pump station maintenance. One of the things with some of those things with pieces is that's nice about the phone is one, the map tends to not be quite as important to what you're doing, and secondly, many times your pump stations they're below ground, right, or what you've got to go check and do, which means you're climbing down a ladder. And so if you are limiting the amount of things that have to be in your hands or strapped to you, whereas a phone, you can slide it into a pocket, it really is nice from a safety perspective. So I thought the phone would be a kind of an appropriate way to show this. But you can run all this, the same application on a tablet or whatnot as well too. So we're going to talk about here, I've got, you see on the tile, show me tasks that are assigned to me, and it's all grouped by assets. So we're going to focus on pumps, which you see, I can kind of highlight a different, oops, hit the wrong tile there. I can highlight a different button and it's going to move me into things, but I'm going to switch here and go into pumps. And you can see I've got a list of pump activities that are assigned to me: fluoride inspections, pump and motor exercises, et cetera, et cetera. If I want to see where those are on the map, I'll just go ahead and hit the little map view here. And now it's going to bring me and show me location-wise on the map the location of those pieces there. The map interface is really nice. I can use my fingers. I'm going to pan and zoom and just use my fingers to zoom right into a specific location here. And we'll see, I'll just zoom in here and we'll get the details of this individual location in here. Now, I think it's really important to talk about when we get into, when you start thinking about asset management strategies and how you're going to tackle your approach to asset management, and as we get into pump station maintenance and those things, you will often hear folks start talking about horizontal asset management versus vertical asset management, right? And for lots of things within a water system or a sewer system, it's really easy to kind of classify where does it belong. Horizontal assets are things like pipe, fire hydrants, valves, those kind of pieces that are certainly very spread out across your utility. And you're typically looking and thinking about those things from a kind of horizontal view, right? And that's where the sort of turn comes from in there. So when you, and then you've got this idea of vertical assets, right? And vertical assets are what is really what we think about when we think of treatment plant facilities, right? And other sort of complicated assets where you've got lots of expensive assets enclosed in a really small area. Often they're, not represented well by looking at them horizontally, but you're thinking of schematic views or they're layered on top of each other. And so kind of hence the term vertical assets. What we're going to talk about today from a pump station, lift station maintenance perspective is really treating them as horizontal assets, okay? That's not necessarily the right answer because there's no wrong or right answer to that. It really has to do with your approach and how you want to tackle some things. And pump stations and lift stations kind of fall in that gray area between horizontal and vertical assets. I think, for the most part, most people's pump station activities work really well as horizontal assets because pump stations themselves are not overly complicated. You typically, depending on how big it is and what's going on, you have a fairly limited number of components. It's not like a treatment plant that has hundreds and hundreds of components, right? So I'm going to walk you through that. We'll probably on another webinar here in the next month or so do a little bit of a deeper dive into vertical assets and talk about that in there as well too. So I just wanted to mention that to people. If you have kind of questions about horizontal, vertical assets, certainly throw those questions in that Q&A, and we can try to address and talk about some of those here too. All right, back to the phone. So here you see I'm zoomed in. In this particular case, I've got 6 pump stations that are here. I've only got one task assigned that's just on here, but I could just as easily have tasks assigned to me for each of those kind of 6 pumps that are in there. And you see it gives me some information about it. I can touch on that, and it's going to give me whatever information I want, or whatever information you have configured to show up about that particular pump, or information in there, or information about that. I can also I can hyperlink drawings or other things from here as well too. So if I want to see details or have as-builts available to people or those kind of things, I can have that again sort of available right on my phone. But here I'm going to come in and hit the start button. Now, what's cool here is here I've got my entire sort of work order associated with me. Now, this is 100% customizable. Okay, so you can set all of these fields and the data you're collecting to really whatever your workflow is, which I think is really important when we talk about pump station maintenance, right? Because when we talk about kind of like think working on valves, right? There's only really so many ways you're going to exercise a valve, right? So while everybody has their tweaks and their ways that they want to think about it a little bit different, exercising a valve is a really straightforward operation. Now, when we talk about our pump station facilities, they're all different, right? They've all been designed different. They've got different components in them. They've got, you've got different ways that you're going to tackle it, all that stuff. And so here, really, the flexibility of Sedaru is really important. And so you can design these forms to have whatever you want. So it's got an assigned work order number and schedule date, some of that was assigned from the office. And so that information's in there. And then I can just kind of scroll up here and I can go in and I can easily fill out my form. So it's neat here is this last service date will automatically populate from the last time that this pump was serviced. In this case, I'm working on something new here, so it doesn't have anything in there, so we'll leave it blank. So I go in here, I'll punch in my start time, and let's push it back an hour for fun. But we'll say here I started this at I'm on the East Coast of the U.S. in Connecticut, so we'll punch the time in here. And now I'm going to come in, I'm just going to fill out my forms. Now, one of the things that you almost always want to do when I am talking to people about how you're going to standardize asset management, how you're going to think more about these things, is you really want your fields that you're filling out here to have pick lists, right? So folks are not in there typing away, right? You want to be able to quickly be able to let them fill in these forms, and that way you can standardize on the reporting on things, right? And you can put that information right into here. So we'll just kind of fill out these pieces. And now here I can come in and I'll throw a photo in. I'll tell you one of the nice things about grabbing about when you grab pictures of things, especially for pump station rounds, and I've seen this happen a few times, right? Where you have, let's say you've got these relatively routine maintenance tasks that have to happen, right? So you've got staff, they're out there driving around. Everybody at some point in time has had concerns of, gosh, did we actually go there and do that check? And I can't tell you how many times I walk into pump stations and they've got a paper checklist like hanging up on the door, and somebody's kind of scrawling in their initials that they were there and all those sort of things, right? So which again is I guess great, except for now it's just another piece of paper. So when you grab a picture, when you go in there, that becomes a really hard thing to just repeat, because all those pictures are going to have embedded in it date time information in it, You've got a really great electronic record of something that, quite frankly, can't get forged later on if there was an issue or a problem. So you're building a really nice record there. And then, so I can go in, I can add that finish time in there, and I can now go in, I'll punch my time in here as well. When did I get done? Now, I've also got the ability, if I wanted to add labor, equipment, material in here, I could do that as well. My name's highlighted up at the top here because that work was assigned to me. So I can go ahead and I'll put an hour for myself. Maybe there were 2 of us that were out there to do this, so we can go ahead and, let's add one more person here. I added Kevin instead of myself there. So let's add myself back in there. Let's add an hour for me also. So now I see you got, 2 employees, an hour each, right? So it's really straightforward to enter that time. I could add in, material information and all those pieces if I wanted to, or equipment used if I wanted to, log the truck that was used for it and that kind of thing. And I can do that right from here. Now what you see here is when I go back and look at pump 24 here, I've got that attachment. So I can very clearly see what did it look like the last time I was in here, and I can see a full asset history in here as well too. So it's really straightforward, really easy to be able to complete. So let me grab this question. Let's see, a question around here is, can the system populate this automatically? Yeah, for the last service date. Yeah, no, exactly. So the great thing with that last service date is yes, it can absolutely automatically populate it. So you can the next time you go into that sort of work order there, the last service date would be populated and have it in there automatically. The other thing you can do with those kind of auto-filling forms, and we see this a lot, is if you have data that you're collecting on pump station maintenance rounds that is not necessarily being logged in your SCADA system, and it's something you want people in the field doing when they do these rounds, like meter reads and that kind of stuff. Same thing, you can do a last meter read, and they can enter the meter read in there, and then when they do that, it can automatically calculate a differential for you or do some validation, because it can't be less than it was before and that kind of thing. So you can have all those pieces of logic built in there. All right, let me go back to the map here. Let's look at a couple things here. So I'm just going to zoom out here so you can kind of see more of my water system on the map. One of the things that I really like from the mobile piece, and that makes it really, I think, easy for the field staff, is the search capabilities work pretty good. So the little magnifying glass in the upper right, I can go ahead and hit on that magnifying glass. I'm just going to type in the word pump and then hit search. And so now what it's doing is it's actually going through and it's looking through the entire asset library for things that have pump in it. And you see the IDs here are all labeled a pump with a number. I'm going to scroll through and you can kind of see the listing of all of them in here. It's also going to find other things that have that in here. So in general, the search capabilities are really nice. And I always ask people to kind of put some thought into the data that you put in here in terms of wanting to make it searchable and some of those pieces, right? So you see some of the location descriptions in here are searchable and that kind of thing. So if I wanted to find a particular pump or facility, I can use the search. So I could come in here and I'm going to say pump 27. It's going to pull up the information for me around pump 27 here. And then I can come in and I'm going to hit start. And now here, because I don't have an assigned task to me on this, I can go in and do any tasks that I want, essentially. So this is, and what this is essentially set up for is so that from the field, you can empower your field staff to take care of work and activities on things without having it to be pre-assigned from the office. And we have folks that take advantage of this, right? So if let's say you do have a recurring maintenance task that is going to be, you're going to check every one of your pump stations every day. You can argue, why would I need somebody to set that up in the office for me? I just want to take my phone, I want to go out in the field, and I want to just be able to run with it. So you can do that right from here. So I could come in and say, hey, I'm going to do pump reads in here, right? And I can go in, and the same thing what we were just talking about in here is if I put in some of these pump reads. I'm just going to punch some numbers in here on this one. And you see here, I can look at the hour meter, what the water meter is telling me, what the previous reads were, and I can have it automatically do some calculations for me on that as well too. And in this case, I can be looking at, you know, efficiency, you know, all those sort of pieces in there as well too. And this is kind of what I mean when we talk about being able to really be able to really be able to customize these to exactly your workflow and exactly what makes sense to you. And again, that's going to get stored right in the history. All those calculations can be set up in there as well too. So another question that came in, can the app be connected to the SCADA system and have it? Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the big things that, and I'm going to actually hop into our Omni application here in a minute, and I'll show you some of that. But one of the big things that you can do in general with Sedaru is we want to help utilities eliminate data silos. We want to make it so that you're not having to go to 6 different places just to get an answer to one question, right? And so one of the things you can do is to go ahead and is to link to SCADA systems. So we'll utilize APIs of a lot of the bigger, more common SCADA vendors, and then there are other ways to access real-time data for some of the other SCADA vendors. So depending on what SCADA vendor you're using and then how you want to see the data and what you do, it matters a little bit how we would tackle it. But yeah, you can have it, and then you can have that information showing up, you know, in Field Force or in the Omni application, which I'm gonna hop into. Let's go into it right now. Let's see. Yeah, so good question. Yeah, so another question that came in is, can the system issue new work orders based on meter readings and some of that? And the short answer is yeah. And I'm going to go in. Let me stop sharing on my phone. Let's go back on the computer, and I'll kind of show you how some of that works here. Let's see. All right, let's do. All right, so this is the Sedaru Omni application in here. And you see here, we're looking at an interface that's kind of similar to what we were just looking at on the phone, but now I'm running it through a web browser. Looking at this on a desktop. And so I've got across the top here, I've got these performance tiles across the top. And the performance tiles can give me a bunch of different pieces of information. So one, it's showing me here like pump tasks have been completed this year. And then it's also showing me condition-based things in here, right? So in this case, I've got 6 pump rounds that have shown to me, you know, leaking oil. Okay, and so I can now see those. I click on that, and it's going to show those to me on the map, right? So you see I've got some from back here in January, and then I've got a couple of recent ones in here as well too, right? And so I've got the ability then to go in on any one of these pumps that are showing me as having a condition problem, and I could then schedule follow-up maintenance activities for any of those. Okay, and so I could go into this one in particular here, and then I could come in and say, what kind of work type do I want to do? Do I want to go in and do maintenance tasks on them because, you know, we know that it's leaking and we want to get into the weeds of that. So I could also have a similar sort of trigger set up for certain hour reads, like you said, based off information that's coming off of those hour meter readings that you're either collecting on there or also pulling from SCADA. So it's really up to you how you want to tackle that. And that's really one of the nice things with the way that the Sedaru application is set up and using these performance tiles is you're going to be able to kind of all in one place be able to get at all these different meter readings and maintenance activities and condition assessments and be able to kind of holistically approach and tackle those there. So that's one good example of that. Another question that popped up in here is essentially, where does all this pump data come from, right? In terms of the information about the pumps and all that. And it's a good question because it's sometimes not as obvious. In general, so Sedaru is designed to pull information off of your GIS, okay? And so we are going to pull that information directly in from your GIS. If you aren't currently today putting any of that pump information, pump station equipment, any of those pieces into your GIS, that's typically just something we would work with you on to get that information into your GIS. So there's a bunch of ways to kind of tackle that. Typically kind of manually adding those things to the GIS in and of itself isn't a big deal, right? Depending on your system, obviously. But if you've got, 20 pumps in your system and you've got, some other related equipment and other pieces, and you're talking about, adding kind of 50 assets to your GIS, that's a pretty straightforward task. So it's designed to just pull all that information right from there. I want to show you another example that I think is pretty good in here as well, too. And so here we can look at, and again, sort of talking about data that you can get out of these pump station rounds. Let me go, you scroll over here. And you see here, in this case, a lot of routine pump inspections happening. So pump work in the past month, there's been 317. You look at like total amount of sort of pump work that's happened in the past year, right? We're talking about, over 3,000 rounds and, essentially pumps that have been touched. In addition to kind of looking at that on the map, what I can do is look at this in a trend perspective here. So I can come in here. I'm just going to grab this particular trend. I'm going to drag it down here. And what it's going to do is actually going to populate and show me on the map what it looks like, right? So in this case, on any given day, we're doing 16 pump station rounds. You see kind of the average there rounds up to about 16. And you kind of see how on each given day, you can kind of look and see, what does that look like in here, right? And, how is that trending? I can go back and say, I want to look and see what this looks like over the previous 3 months, right? So really, really kind of fast, easy way to get at your information, see that these things have been completed, see that things are happening there. I can also kind of see long-term trends here, right? So if you look at if I look at the last 3 months, and that's down, productivity's down about 4% from the previous 3 months before, right? So the idea there is let's get a hold of some of these metrics and some of these things, and let's cut off little problems before they could become big problems there. If I come back to our map view, I also can come in here, and in this case, there's a flag, and it's basically mining and looking through these pump inspections and looking for issues that need attention, right? And what's going on this. So one of these was just a test. Some of this is I think they're getting ready to do some repairs on one of these, so that it's been flagged for like a supervisor to look at. And then here, one of their rounds, it looks like here there was a power outage, and they had to reset the PLC, and so they probably, they just wanted to flag that so folks knew about that and to do that. So again, you've got these kind of easy ways now within Sedaru to be able to kind of do more with that. And I'll click on that particular one, and we can, and you can kind of see the individual information around that. And I was looking for it on the map here, but I'm not sure where it went. Oh, I think it's this little spot here. Oh, here it is. It's a little off there. So, and then again, you're going to be able to see and view all those things right on the map and be able to work with them right from there as well. What's also nice is all this data is getting stored in your GIS as well. So you have an ability to really be able to pretty easily work with all that information and to report on it in just about any fashion that you want. So as I drill into any of these individual ones here, like in this case, I can go into one and then I can go ahead and zoom in on the locations, and it's going to should be bringing me right into the proper spot there. All right, so we're getting up to our towards the end of our 30 minutes here. It's a good time if you got any additional questions to go ahead and get those questions fired in here. One of the things that I can do here also, which I'll mention here before we before we sign off, let me go in and look for one of our pumps in here. So here I go in and look for that pump, and I'm going to create a work order. When I create the work order from here, one of the things that I can do is I can set up recurrence options. So again, depending on how you want to set up your maintenance schedules, and kind of like I said, if you're doing daily maintenance schedules, it's pretty easy to just say, folks know what they've got to do. But if you've got a weekly schedule or bi-weekly schedule, or what we really see people gravitating to when they start using a tool like this, if they were running daily maintenance checks, they might still want to run daily maintenance checks to put eyeballs on things, but they might break out their maintenance a little bit better in terms of now have a defined monthly or quarterly kind of thing. And so I can set those recurring kind of workflows up in here as well too. I can stagger them and kind of spread them out and just have a more robust kind of management strategy for how I'm going to do that. So I'd be able to go in here and set up recurrence intervals on these things and be able to do that. The other thing I'll mention in terms of, I mentioned it in terms of SCADA, but didn't show you here. If I come over in here, I think I've got, yeah. So here I've got a tile that is only just pulling in SCADA information. And so instead of looking at results of like work history and that sort of thing, here I can actually look at information from that SCADA tag, right? And so really common that folks, when they set these things up, they'll also integrate SCADA. And so if I'm trying to troubleshoot a problem going on, I can go in and I can look at, okay, when was the last time we inspected that pump station or lift station? Were there any issues? Were there any problems? Okay. And then now what's going on in the SCADA system? So in the same place, I can say, okay, hey, how's that been looking for the past week, right? And really be able to drill into that information right from here. And so, and it's pretty, like I said, pretty straightforward to pull in a lot of the SCADA information. We're only connecting to the SCADA historian, so it does require that you have some existing SCADA infrastructure, but like I said, it's relatively straightforward process. Well, good. I'm not seeing any other questions from folks at the moment. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to learn a little bit more about doing pump station, lift station maintenance with Sedaru. I hope this was beneficial. And like I said, coming up on Thursday, we're going to talk all about meter maintenance, how we can kind of tie into existing meter management systems as well too. So there's some really interesting applications there. And then next week, we're going to talk about connecting Sedaru up to legacy work management systems. And then next Thursday, do hydrant maintenance as well too. So if you go to Sedaru, www.sedaru.com/webinars, you can sign up for those additional ones too. Well, thanks everybody again for your time today. And we'll see you again soon on another webinar. Thanks.